call the September 21 Reno County Planning Commission meeting to order. Staff, will you call the roll?
Shortfager.
Here.
Strand.
Here.
Schaefer.
Here.
Seltzer.
Here.
Macklin. Martin. Here. Kurtzen.
Here. Glad everybody could make it this evening. In your packets, you would have gotten two sets of minutes. From one would be for our August 17 meeting, and the other would be from our September 25 meeting where we reviewed the solar regulations. September 5th, excuse me. So we'll approve these in two steps. First, Chair will entertain a motion on the August 17th minutes.
So move to approve.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor of approving the August 17 minutes, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Minutes from August 17 approved. We'll now move on to the meeting September 5 minutes. Chair will entertain a motion there.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor of approving the September 5 minutes, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. September 5 minutes. All right. Ducks in a row here. To ensure the rights of all parties of interest and to provide an opportunity for each party to address the Planning Commission in an orderly manner, the Planning Commission will follow a fact-finding procedure which is outlined in the handout in each chair. Your attention to this procedure is appreciated. If a recommendation is made tonight, that recommendation will be based upon the record of information presented at the Planning Commission. The County Commissioners will not conduct a separate public hearing or accept additional written documents. The County Commissioners will consider written requests for additional public comments or documents based only on valid claims that the public hearing process was incomplete or based upon new information which has become available since this public hearing. For the purpose of this County Commission policy, a public hearing is considered incomplete only if the Planning Commission failed to follow procedural guidelines, which resulted in a denial of due process to a party of interest, or if the Planning Commission failed to allow an interested party an opportunity for public comment. For purposes of the County Commission policy, new information shall pertain only to germane information which did not exist at the time of the public hearing, or which was unknown or could not have been discovered with reasonable diligence. An example may be a traffic studies completed after the Planning Commission recommendation. Planning Commission recommendation to the County Commissioners will be accompanied by a summary of proceedings before the Planning Commission at its public hearing, along with the report and recommendations of the county planner, letters, informal petitions, and other information constituting the record of proceedings provided to the Planning Commission before and during the public hearing. If the Planning Commission makes a recommendation after tonight's public hearing, this case may be presented to the County Commissioners in approximately 2 weeks. Contact planning staff or visit the website for the County Commissioner agenda items. I will now formally open the public hearing regarding case number 2023-09, a request by Nicole Neese to vacate a 60-foot ingress-egress easement and future roadway located on Lot 5, Block A of Morgan Heights subdivision. The address of the property is 1403 North Mayfield Road. Have any of the Planning Commission members had any outside contacts regarding this case?
No.
Do any of the Planning Commission members have any conflict of interest in this case?
No.
Will the applicant please come to the podium and state your name and address for the record? You have 10 minutes to present your case. Additional time may be allotted to the applicant at the discretion of the chair. Planning Commission members may request clarification at the end of your presentation or may have additional questions.
All right, thank you. Hi, my name is Nicole Neese. I recently purchased 1403 North Mayfield Road here in Hutchinson. There is a 60-foot ingress-egress easement and future roadway that was on the plat that was filed in 1983. I am petitioning today to get that easement vacated. simply because I would like to construct a fence on my property. I do have a couple of horses that I would like to keep on my property, and I would like to use the entire Lot 5 of my property. I do have a printout here of what I would like to show you all. The highlighted part is obviously the 60-foot easement. On the west line of the property is a barbed wire fence that belongs to the homeowner to the west. There is no gate or anything that allows anybody to have access to that property from this easement. Also, you'll see a red dotted line on the west line of the property as well. There is a line of trees there. I don't know how old they are, but they are fairly large. They are about 6 to 10 feet apart. So no more than a small car could fit through. So I'm not even sure how that property owner would be able to access this property. This line of trees is about 12 feet to the west of that, or excuse me, to the east of that west property line. And I would appreciate it if you would consider letting me have that vacation. Thank you.
Anybody have questions for the applicant? Okay, thanks.
I just need to get my directions straight here. Which way's west on your map?
On the handout I gave you, west is right here, according to the compass. It's in red. We've got north, east, south, and west.
Oh, okay. It was chopped off there.
W.
Oh, is it? I'm sorry.
Got it.
Okay. Any other questions?
Thank you.
Is there anyone in the audience who would like to comment on this case? Would you,
Maybe you want the,
oh, sorry, I need the staff report first.
need to do a staff, a small
Yeah, we
staff
do.
report first? or-
Yep, please.
Okay. So, Mark Bonatchen, County Planner. So as you heard, this was a request to vacate a 60-foot wide egress easement. To help orient you on the map, we're located on Mayfield Road, just right kind of south of 17th Avenue. Another way to look at it is we're about, directly east of the Hutchinson Airport. So that's kind of the area where we're talking. On the map that you see there, the red line and in your packet is where the approximate easement is located. We've done several of these here in the last few months here. Notification requirements are a little bit different, where we just have to notify the property owners that are adjacent to that, or it could be affected by that easement. And so in this particular case, we notified 3 people. We notified obviously the property owner. The person to the north was sent a notice as well. That is Mr. and Mrs. Ramirez. We did not hear any comments back from them. And then to the west, we notified that property owner, Mr. and Mrs. Osner here. So those are the 3 people that could have a potential interest in this easement. Did not have any written comments submitted by any of the people that were notified here. This is a small subdivision. It consists of approximately 6 lots. It's identified as Morgan Heights, and Mr. and Mrs. Neese own Lot 5. You can see here the 6 lots on the map. Highlighted in green is that easement, and also what she provided you just now, highlighted in yellow, is that easement. That easement is entirely on their property. It does not straddle the property owner to the north. To the north, at all here. You will see on this map here and in her handout, there is a telephone cable easement that kind of cuts diagonally across their property. That is not part of this petition. All we are considering is the ingress and egress easement here. This is an aerial photo, a little bit bigger here, aerial photo. Now, the property owner on the west of that, he owns the great big field, and he owns the first house that's on the west side of Mayfield Road. So eliminating this easement would make it a little more difficult for him to have access to the northern part of his property. But as you heard testimony tonight here, that there's large trees that are in the way. There's no access really to that portion of the property. And actually, I did speak to that property owner and asked him if he had any concerns to submit those in writing to me or come to this public hearing. And as you can see in our report, we don't have any kind of written public comments from that property owner. A little bit closer view of the property right there. You can see at one time, there's some tracks that kind of go back and lead to the house, but you can see in this picture here all the large trees that kind of separate her property from the property to the west right there. So nobody is using that easement to access that northern part of the property here. These are Google Earth shots from 2019, maybe a little bit clearer than the shots that I have. So you can see in there on the top is a large building that's not on their property, but they own the property to the south right there. So you can see again the large trees that are in the way of that easement. A little bit closer view, you can see what that looks like. Last picture, albeit from 2007, a lot of the trees were taken out. This is the ground shot from Google Earth, but you can see what the 60-foot easement looks like. All of the improvements are on the south side of the lot because of that 60-foot wide egress easement, because you cannot build in an egress easement. So those are the photos that I have of the property. Requirements are a little bit different than what we do with conditional use permits. Again, the board needs to find that proper notice was provided to the public. The public will suffer no loss or inconvenience by such vacation, and no private rights will be injured or endangered here. We did send notifications to all of the utilities in that area. You saw, again, something from Kansas Gas that said that they don't have any utilities in that easement area. None of the other utility companies responded to my notice here. Everybody in the room has received the staff report, so I won't go into great detail with the rest of my report, but certainly if you have questions for me, please ask. With that, staff recommends approval of the road vacation based off of those three conditions that you see listed in there. So with that, I'd stand for questions.
Are the rules different on an egress easement than a utility easement as far as putting a fence across it?
Well, you can't put a fence across any type of easement, regardless if it's an egress or if it's a utility easement.
I thought you could put a fence across, you just might have to tear it down.
Well, yeah, that could be for anything. I mean, she could have put a fence across this egress easement, I guess.
Yeah.
However, if somebody, wouldn't have to be necessarily the property owner to the west, if somebody wanted to construct that road for a future development, then she would have to remove that fence. With a utility easement, for example, yeah, if you fence a utility easement, you have the potential of having to remove a portion of that fence, so the utility company can get in there and maintain their utilities. So there is that. But, again, utilities can be in an easement like this as well, so.
I don't have a question, but in reading your report, it looked like you kind of went the extra mile to talk to the Osners about this because it could be a little sensitive. And so I appreciate you making the extra effort to reach out to them.
They actually contacted me, so based off of my notice and everything, and so I did, talk to them about what they need to do if they have any concerns, with this, to put those in writing to me, that I don't want to, try and guess what they were saying through a verbal conversation. But his questions, like I stated in my staff report, were mainly just, well, what is a vacation? I think he was under the impression that a road was going to be constructed instead of not be constructed. So that's what his questions were. But yeah, so we always try and make sure people understand what the notice is about.
Mark, does this mean that the property to the west, I'm assuming there are no other ingress, egress easements anywhere around the rest of that 14 acres?
There is not, yes,
Okay,
that's
so-
correct. And so, you know, I looked at that and then, well, like I stated in my staff report, I went into a little bit greater detail, you know, what is the potential of developing this property? You know, certainly it'd be easier if it had that easement, but I think the bottom line is that everybody still has public road access to their property. We're not landlocking anybody, and to develop that property to the extent of the current zoning district by allowing 2-acre lots, I think, you know, it could be very difficult to be able to do that. The cost of construction of a public road, you know, the installation of septic systems and wells on there, and so, you know, the land could be split for 3-acre home sites potentially, but, you know, it's been there since 1983, 1984, nothing's ever happened with that. And actually, if you look at the deed to his property, they're actually tied together. So he owns Lot 1, because if you look at Lot 1, which is where he owns, I mean, Lot 1 doesn't look like what it looks like on the map, so the deed actually say that he owns Lot 1, and then another legal description that describes that tract of ground. So Lot 1 is not the L-shaped, Lot 1 is just what you see right there. The deed will show that he also owns that tract, and they're kind of tied together. So that's why, you know, that's why we're not really landlocking. You know, he still has the ability to do it, albeit the location of the house may make it difficult, but none of that was put in writing. And so here again, it was a road that was platted, probably shouldn't have been platted, or it should have been constructed at the time that the subdivision was developed. And so, you know, it's something that should probably just go away.
It was platted in 83?
Yeah, I think
Or thereabouts.
83, 1984. yeah.
Okay.
Any other questions for staff?
And I might add, with setbacks on there, you'll notice on, hers is probably a better thing, that, you know, we don't enforce platted setback requirements. Okay, so even though it'll show a 40-foot setback along that easement, that was, if the road was ever gonna be developed, you would want to have a structure at least 40 foot off the road. We don't enforce setbacks on plats, we enforce our zoning regulations. And so, just because it says 40 foot there, we're not gonna be enforcing that as well.
Mark?
Okay, thank you.
Is there anyone in the audience who would like to comment on this case? It looks pretty slim, so I think we're gonna move right on. Do you have any additional statements you'd like to make?
No.
Okay, thanks. Staff, you have any additional?
No.
Okay. Commission, does this board have any further questions for the applicant or staff? Seeing none, the public hearing is now closed. Acceptance or denial of the vacation request must be based on finding that proper notice was provided to the public. The public will suffer no loss or inconvenience by such vacation, and no private rights will be injured or endangered. This is a time where the planning commission can discuss this case and ask procedural questions of staff only. Is there any further discussion on this case? I think silence is a no. Staff will, chair will entertain a motion at this time.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, I would move that case number 2023-09, the request by Nicole Neese requesting the 60-foot egress easement and future roadway located on Lot 5, Block A of Morgan Heights subdivision be vacated as described in this petition, finding that proper notice has been given, public will suffer no loss or inconvenience by the vacation, no private rights will be injured or endangered, and based on reasons as listed in the staff report and as heard at this public hearing.
Second it.
Been moved and seconded. Do I hear any discussion? Seeing none, staff, please call the roll.
Schwartfeger,
Yes.
Tran,
Yes.
Schaefer,
Yes.
Seltzer,
Yes.
Martin. Yes. Thurston.
Yes. Motion
carries.
There you go.
You're vacated.
It's vacated.
Thank you for the vacation.
Thanks for going through the process, we appreciate
You
that.
bet.
You're good to go if you need to go, unless you want to sit through and enjoy more of our meeting. You're most welcome to.
I will let you handle that.
Is it just more jokes and stuff?
Kind of.
More banter.
It will be more banter for sure. Goodness, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's good to see you.
Okay. We'll move on to item B on our agenda, the discussion of the text amendment for the table of contents in Article 15105 of the zoning regulations to establish commercial solar energy guidelines. Staff, do you have some comments?
Sure. So based off of our meeting on September 5, I think the board had additional changes. A lot of those changes are highlighted in yellow, and so I can certainly go over those changes and see if there are further comments before the changes are accepted. Last meeting, we talked about adding essentially residential or private solar regulations to this document, and so with that, I added Article 25-113, and that's at the end of this regulation document that you see there. Because you wanted to add private, then that kind of changed some of the other categories in 25-101 and 25-102, and so based off of that recommendation from this board, we struck out the sentence that said these guidelines don't apply to private solar energy systems. Instead, we said that guidelines for private solar energy systems are subject to Article 25-113, and that's at the back. The other change was the placement of a private solar energy system shall be permitted as an accessory use in all zoning districts, and so that's found in 25-102. So with that, since we are talking about the residential on this page, I'd probably be easier maybe to jump to the last page and look at 25-113 and just kind of discuss that all at once, if you don't mind. So under 25-113, the first one was that all ground-mounted private solar energy systems shall comply with the minimum setback requirements and maximum height requirements found in Article 13. And that was for your request. Article 13 deals in the zoning regulations with setbacks and height. I also added in here, and not in your packet, after the word shall, I said, private solar energy systems shall be permitted as an accessory use and comply with minimum setback requirements. I thought maybe that would help clarify, even though it is contained, in 25-102 as well, but I thought it'd help clarify that. Number 2, all ground-mounted private solar energy systems shall obtain a zoning permit. 3 would be all ground-mounted private solar energy systems used for agricultural purposes shall be exempt from Article 25-113 upon receiving an approved zoning permit and agricultural exemption permit. No fees will be charged upon approval of these permits. And so this is related to if you're putting up private solar panels for your farming operation, as you should well know, farming operations, buildings, land used for agricultural purposes are exempt from zoning regulations by statute. So here again, if you're using this for that type of purpose, you would be exempt from the zoning regulations, but we still require that no fee zoning permit and no fee ag exemption. That helps put on record what you're using these panels for.
That would apply even to like a water well, solar panel, well.
Yeah, all
Out
that.
in the field.
Is agricultural purposes defined somewhere?
It's defined in the zoning regulations, yes. Then lastly, all roof-mounted private solar energy systems are exempt from Article 25, 113. So if you want to put one on your house, then you don't have to get a permit for a roof-mounted type of system. We're just talking about ground-mounted. So with that, that's what I had in here. A couple of other comments. If you want to leave it in, then we may have to change the actual title of this article, because we just talked about commercial solar. So we may just need to call it solar energy system regulations, if we're gonna leave the private in it, because it'd be a little bit confusing to me if we're talking about commercial, and then we've got a section in here talking about private as well, so that would be one thing to discuss. The other thing I would bring up, height requirements in the R1 zoning district is 35 feet maximum, so that'd be for any kind of building. So if we're saying that you have to comply with Article 13 for solar, that means a solar panel in an R1 zoning district could be 35 feet, but yet we're saying a commercial can be no greater than 20 feet. And so there's a little bit of an issue with that potentially, if you do that. Lastly, I guess, last comment on that before maybe open up for your discussion on that is, looking at that, I'll do what you want, but I don't think we should be regulating it. I don't think we should be regulating residential. I think it ought to be taken out, something like that. I think the commercial is one thing, trying to regulate a residential solar. I don't see much value in that. People can put large buildings 10 foot from your property line, and so do we really want to get into the game of regulating a solar panel and making sure that it's at least 10 foot from your property line? Like I say, I'll leave it at that, and if you want to leave it in, that's fine. I don't know, I think it's overkill to be able to regulate residential. Saying that we don't have building codes, because then you're looking at the electrical hookups into the house, that type of thing.
You want us to put that in there, do you?
Yeah, exactly. So, I know Commissioner Strand wanted it in there, and I say that's fine, but I think we probably need to look at the conflict with the height and stuff, but,
Mark, the way it's written, is this private solar applicable to the entire county?
no, it's only gonna be applicable to the zoned areas, which would be the eastern third roughly. It's
Well,
not
I mean,
gonna be-
is the commercial wind energy, whatever, the unzoned area, it technically has a zone now, doesn't it?
Right.
So wouldn't everything be technically, right, but,
Commercial wind is county, well.
right, is
Yeah.
the quote-unquote unzoned area.
Yeah, right.
Right.
But
But
this,
isn't that technically a district?
yeah, it's in the commercial,
Right, so if
Yeah,
it's
okay.
applicable in all zoning districts, then,
Oh, I see where you're going.
yeah, I see what you're saying, yeah.
Yeah.
Why don't you just add in there except for the commercial wind district, yeah. Yeah, that's good. Good catch, Alan.
Say that again, Alan?
So,
my concern is the way it's written now is that the commercial wind zoning, the unzoned area still technically has a zone in it now after the commercial wind. So the way it's written now, it looks like we care about setbacks, outside of Turon for a solar panel, and I don't think that's the intent of the board.
yeah, I don't have authority out there to require permits for anything. Okay, so under 25-102, I would just write in there, except the commercial wind zoning district. And that should take care of that. I see what you're saying, yeah. It's a good catch.
Back on page 14. You had edited the number 9, the groundwater monitoring plan. You use the word, the plan may include. Should it be shall or will include?
This is part of the development agreement, though.
Yeah,
Okay.
we can get later, that's,
It just caught my eye, and I just wanted to make sure that we had the right verbiage in there. I know that's the development agreement for the commissioners, but we use a lot of shalls and wills throughout this document, and there was a may in there, and it just caught my eye. Don't know. It was just a question
Okay.
that caught my, and that's not a statement that we need to. I just wanted to make sure we had the right
well, it's in the developer's agreement, and so it's not, we don't want to make anything mandated.
If we put should or shall or will, that means that the commissioners have to abide by it.
Yes.
Gotcha. I'm tracking that. I'm completely okay with that.
While he's in that area, I do have a question on that 9B. You know, you got A in there, you know, groundwater monitoring, you know, and you go with that. And then B says dispute mitigation agreement shall govern any complaints by landowners. I don't feel that's really descriptive of what we're talking about. You following what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I mean, well, it's gonna be, you know,
Should we say,
you're
like-
gonna have a dispute and mitigation agreement developed, and so then if there's an issue, that will,
On the groundwater
yeah.
monitoring.
And so I guess if we're gonna go off script a little bit and talk about that, this is the other thing this board talked about last month, soil sampling, maybe water sampling. I don't know what to do with that. I don't, that's another thing, I don't know how you monitor that. I don't know if that should even be in the regulations. I don't know, how can you prove that any type of contamination would be caused by anything? I mean, there's, you know, there's all kinds of things that are buried in the ground that you don't even know potentially about. What about, you know, unlicensed junk vehicles sitting out on properties, things that are buried on people's land? And so I don't know. I don't know what to do with soil sampling of that. I saw some things on the watering plan, you know, having test wells, but still, that's just a snapshot in time that you would be doing something like that, and to be able to link that back to that.
I mean, by doing that up front at the beginning of the project, that gives you a standard or a base
Well, what?
to gauge any future issues from. So if there are additional pollution issues that develop, you know, that would help in trying to trace those to wherever they came from. Saying, okay, well, we've got this, this, and this now that we didn't have, where could that come from? You start looking around, you know.
I'm concerned with section 9. I think this water analysis we don't define what chemicals we're looking for. We don't define, you know, what kind of set points, you know, what.
Well, yeah, I mean,
When, you know, what's the action level for when we fall under a dispute and that falls under the dispute and mitigation agreement? We don't have anything. What's the time frame? It looks to me like an open-ended can of worms.
That's why it's vague, because I don't know where to go with that.
And I mean, chemicals used in the manufacturing of solar panels, I mean, they're mostly glass, so am I gonna sue because I have sand in my well? I mean,
Yeah.
I kind of agree with the way, you know, 9 is just worded. I mean, so you're gonna do a soil sample or water sample before the solar project becomes operational. The water analysis shall test for chemicals used in the manufacturing of solar panels. Well, there shouldn't be anything in there based on that if you're just putting these things up. You know, if anything, you'd do that to get a standard, which you would then, any future water tests that were done could be compared against, but there's nothing in there about future water tests. So I mean, it's, you know, like I said, it's worthless kind of the way it's worded right now.
well, I couldn't find anything that would define what we would be looking for specifically.
Yeah.
Just my cruising around the internet, what chemicals or what substances are we testing for?
Right.
And if you don't know what you're testing, I guess that concerns me, that we're testing without knowing what we're testing. I think the idea had some, what kind of, like which heavy metals and how much? I mean, that's a real open-ended definition.
I know, I've read some articles where cadmium, mercury, lead, some have been
Okay, so
in
if you have
before.
lead in the sample already, because it's an old house where he took the sample, I mean, what's that telling you?
Well, that it was there previously.
Well, was it in the water? Was it in the pipe? I mean,
Was it
you're still not saying anything actionable. And I'm concerned that if you have data without a plan or without a solid basis for what we're gathering, that it's just gonna open a can of worms. I think the idea is noble, and I think protecting the groundwater and the surface water is important, but I don't necessarily see that this is the answer.
Well, I guess if there's nothing that's going to come off of them, it really shouldn't be a problem to establish what was there before they were there.
What are we looking for, though? Like
metals.
specifically, like which specific heavy metals? I think we need to have it in the regulations.
The ones I saw have been like vague, open-ended, and I don't know how you link the two.
I don't think I don't know of a way, but I'm not an environmental professional. I
Right.
don't know that any of us are. You know, I almost think this is a problem for KDHE or the EPA. I don't know that that this is a planning and zoning issue.
Wouldn't be that much different than like, grain elevators or commercial laundries and things like that, have had issues with, groundwater pollution in the past,
Right, but
Sometimes
those
the
aren't
pollution
regulated
shows up
by-
and EPA or somebody gets involved and they trace it back to the source.
Right, but that's not planning and zoning.
No, it's not planning and zoning, no.
Right.
But I guess, that happens after the fact, and I guess maybe what we're looking at here is trying to do something, be more proactive to try to prevent it getting pollution issues.
I mean, I didn't have a lot of time to turn this around, from our meeting on the 5th, but I'm struggling with, I think like Alan said, I think it's noble to try and do something. I don't know what the specifics are. But
I'm thinking, we just had our well test, and it's been 6 months ago, so we try to do it every year. I'm trying to think of what that entailed, and it was just a residential, where residential well test.
Kind of a residential, like,
And it tested for, I think it had heavy metals in it, and it had certain things, but I think we're gonna burden some lab somewhere when we get, if and when we get a project. There could be a lot. I mean, I'm not opposed to the sampling piece of it, but I'm with Alan, how do you manage that? You get a baseline, I get it. I compared my water test this year to last year to see if it changed. But I don't have any action other than, okay, I might have a little bit of heavy metal, I better replumb my house. I don't know. I don't know what that is. I don't know if there's some self-governance there's still some, we don't want to put a burden on a landowner to make them, and that's a fine line to walk, make them take the test, but yet you look for the developer side of it. If we don't make the landowner take the test, we probably shouldn't make the developer take the test. I don't know. It could be, I get where we're headed with the idea. But I think Alan, you're very close to the answer that we have here.
Yeah, I don't know what
That
the
should-
answer is, but
that should be, that's probably, we're primarily, we want to make sure there's protections in place, but only in a land use setting, not anything else.
Look at some of these regs, some of the regs from these other counties that we acquired and, like one from Douglas County, they just basically say that the developer shall offer be made to all owners of the property within a quarter mile of the site to have a water test done. Okay. Give the results to the Director of Zoning and Codes, and that's all they say.
Yeah.
It
And that's what I
doesn't
saw.
do anything, it just says,
Yeah.
okay, they can do this if they want.
So all of a sudden, Mark becomes the gatekeeper for all the water tests?
Well,
So Mark's gonna have 100 water tests, what do you do with
What am I
them?
gonna do with it? Exactly. If mine doesn't say, give it to me, I mean, it's just something that's offered to the property owner, and I don't,
Back on 11B, it's talking about soil erosion and subject to the minimum requirements under KDHE. Can we have a kind of a catch-all? I think we agree that water quality is a big issue and we need to provide for it, but we're hung up on, we're not capable of regulating that, and we shouldn't, other than to require the developer to comply with KDHE, which may go without saying, I don't know, but that's how we handled the soil piece.
What is the trigger for KDHE? I don't think we know that one either.
I don't know, I suppose it's on a complaint basis, for one.
Then it circles back to the dispute mitigation process.
Well, I think for construction, isn't there a legal definition for how much gets disturbed when a SWIP becomes involved?
usually it's an acre. An acre is when they usually have to do that through KDHE.
Okay.
It's usually an acre of land, so I'm sure they would have to file.
So
File for
really,
that.
any project that'll fit under these regs
Right.
will qualify.
Yeah, well, like the subdivision we did,
Mm-hmm.
they're doing that right now. They're getting that permit. So this would definitely.
It is an acre.
It's an acre?
So they would do it at that point.
So really, the environmental regulatory authority involved will be involved in these
Yes,
projects,
yes.
just by definition.
Exactly.
So with that, we could take that paragraph 9 out of there, couldn't we?
Well, I think it's good to recognize the importance of maintaining water quality, it's just we don't have to own the enforcement of it.
Maybe it could be written, all right, the sentence on number 9 could say, the development plan may include a groundwater monitoring plan, and then a paragraph A would say the dispute mitigation agreement shall govern any complaints by landowners. Because we're in the suggestion portion of the document for the commissioners. So if we put the development plan may include a groundwater monitoring plan, that's kind of, seems a little weird to word it that way, might need a little wordsmithing. And then
Right.
subsection A would say the dispute and mitigation agreement shall govern any complaints by landowners. And then that gives, if if the commissioners want to add something more in there, they have that opportunity. Otherwise, it defaults back to KDHE purview that's already going to be alerted in the project. How does that sound? We've at least, as a board, put it on a document that we were concerned about it. But yet, we're not dictating what needs to happen or how it needs to happen. That comes from a.
Basically, you're
comes
just
from-
transferring that over to the county commission.
It's already in the development side of it. It's already there. It's
Yeah.
not
Well, yeah.
under our baby
I know,
anyhow.
but you're making it really vague. I would say, you know,
we
we don't do that, I just would take it out.
But I
Yeah.
don't know
Yeah.
what those would be and
Then
how.
if we can't be that vague and we can't be specific because we're not experts, then we need to strike it. That's my opinion. If the KDHE is going to be already involved with the project, then we need to stay out of the water business.
I'd like to have it specific. Some, I don't know if I can. I don't know if I
We
can.
could spend another 3 months and looking at different documents than you doing more research, just looking for
at
that.
Three of those other county regs we had, and two of them had a
Yeah,
very similar reference.
Right.
That was vague and got to test your water, and, you know,
Yeah.
landowner gets a copy, and zoning people get a copy, and
I mean, what am I gonna do with that? Just have it on file, I mean,
Sure.
to me, that's for the property
I'm
owner.
concerned that if we leave it vague like that, we
Yep.
give an opportunity for a busload of lawyers to drive right through it.
Yep. I mean, the ones that I saw, I thought they were vague as well, and
So
this board talked about it and kind of wanted something, and I guess I'm
Now we're
looking.
talking ourselves out of it.
I guess I want more direction, because I haven't been able to come up with something that I can concretely say, yeah, this is what you have to do.
Is there any companion language in the wind piece? Nothing about water there?
Not a thing.
No.
I think Russ, you're on the right track here. We need to make it heard that we're concerned about it, and that's something that everyone, including the regulators that are involved in water, need to keep in mind, or we just go ahead and pull it.
or you could just say a groundwater monitoring plan, period. Not say may include, but not be limited, not just strike everything after that. To say, you know, it's a development agreement, if the county wants to develop a groundwater monitoring plan, if they want to develop something, then they can do that. It's just a checkpoint that they can check off or cross out. You know, we're not saying how to do it.
Right.
It's, you know, that's one way to leave it in but take it out, I guess you would say.
How about leaving A and taking the last sentence off? Pretty hard to tell them what chemicals to,
Yeah, I mean,
Test for-
You have to tell them, because it could be for anything.
and
you know.
because
They need to know specifics. See, that's the problem is,
25 years from now, though, they might be making it out of something else.
I mean, you're not gonna require them to test for something that's not gonna be contained, like nitrates, for example.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, that's not right to make them test for things that aren't associated with that, so.
Well, and if all you say is offer a water analysis test, well, they could do
I mean,
it. They could just say pH is a pH of 7.
Yeah.
It's water. Congratulations, you have water.
Don would know more than I do, but there's 10, you know.
It's harder and softer.
Yeah, I mean, if you go down to the lab and get a water test, I mean, they have different kinds of tests, different levels of testing.
Yes, they do. And the local labs may not even be able to test for everything that you want, you know, you may have to ship that off to a regional, so there you go, so there's more expense right there, so So I guess I'm looking for suggestions or direction on that. Like I said, those are the two concerns I had, was the residential and this, because I just,
Well, I guess let's look at the
impossible.
broader context of this thing. What these bullets, 1 through 10 do, are there items that we are suggesting the county commission consider in implementing or developing their development agreement. We're not telling them what all should be included in that. We're just saying, these are things, maybe you want to think about when you create that development agreement. So, I mean, we could just say, a groundwater monitoring plan, period. And just leave that in there at that, and if the county commission wants to take that on and further define what that should be, then that's their prerogative.
I think that will come right back to us. They're gonna come back and they're gonna read that and they say, okay, define it.
No, we're letting you do that. You can't do all your work.
I think the weight will be, of defining that will be on our shoulder ultimately.
Well, I go back to a groundwater monitoring plan that meets the minimum requirements of KDHE.
Well, what's that? We don't even know what that is.
Do they have one?
Do they have one? We need to talk to them and find out before we put the verbiage in the regulations.
yeah.
Well, of course, my water test was residential.
Yeah.
It had some guidelines that said if you were greater than this, you needed to do this.
Yeah. Pour bleach in your well or something.
Shock, you're gonna have to shock your well because you've got E. coli in it or something like that. I mean, each water test has some, it's, the guardrails are pretty wide on that,
Yeah.
but I don't.
Yeah, but if you're outside, safe parameters are gonna tell you that.
There's gonna be,
You need to find an alternate source of water if you can't clean yours up.
it's, yeah, because there was a note at the bottom of my test that said, hey, you've got this out of limits. Mitigation needed. And then they had a bigger than, in the letter, it had I don't think we even had a folder that showed how to shock a well.
You're not planning on selling your house soon now that you made this public, have you?
Not at all. It's just, okay, I don't know that I'm special, but that's just what we do on an annual basis.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
we don't
I
do it
mean-
every year, we do it every 2 years probably. Take a water test in, yeah.
It's pretty, we don't live without water.
No.
I'm going back to that, I think, see, we've got a lot of questions to answer if we're gonna leave it in there.
And
if KDHE is already involved in this project, they already have their antennas up on what needs to happen with this. So I think we could probably, even adding the KDHE piece into that sentence is redundancy to what we already have. And I think we could probably strike that paragraph. That's my thought.
All of number 9 or just paragraph A?
No, all of number 9.
And certainly we do more research on it to see if there's something that we could, put in there that would be tangible and enforceable, but, so you can always reinsert something later if you
I was gonna
want.
say, this isn't the final exam.
You can always-
You're gonna have the public hearing. We're gonna have public hearing, we'll have lots of input, and, maybe somebody out in the public will come in and say, here's you idiots, here's what you need to be doing.
Yep.
Yeah.
Then the light bulb will come on and say, well, yeah, we can consider that, yeah. So, I mean,
I think for this document, we could probably eliminate.
Is that consensus, or?
Should we take a vote? Or are we all in agreement?
You'll have other opportunities.
I'm fine with striking the paragraph.
Is groundwater, this is the only place it's addressed? that I'm remembering.
I mean, there's erosion control permits and stormwater management, so, I mean, specifically listed, I mean, there's those items that are in there, specifically groundwater. I don't think so.
This is the only place for groundwater testing.
Yeah. I mean, there's other things associated with groundwater, but not the testing element.
Well, I feel we'd be a little derelict to leave the topic of groundwater completely unaddressed. And, I mean, I'd be okay with just saying a groundwater monitoring plan may be included, and then listen to what we hear, and maybe we will have better ideas or different ideas after more input. But to completely leave groundwater out, I mean, I guess I suspect that is going to be an issue that's going to come up in the public hearing, as it should. I would like to have that placeholder in it, just to say it's important and we've thought about it, and we think it may need more work.
So groundwater monitoring plan may be included?
Yeah.
And then strike paragraphs A and B.
Yeah.
I could live with that.
That leaves it in there as a placeholder. We find more information
Yeah.
and,
Yep, through the public hearing process, then you can add that in at a later time.
because I mean, you know, I think we've all received information regarding this lawsuit that was filed and, you know, from groundwater pollution and whatnot, but I don't know anything about that where they indicated any procedures that should have been in place to monitor it. I don't know. So,
Okay, I'll leave it in there like that.
Strike A, the paragraphs A and B, but leave that sentence in there, groundwater plan.
I'll certainly go through the other changes here, but I don't think it'll take too terribly long here and just explain, but what are we doing with residential? Get that out of the
Tried
way.
to sidetrack you there, Mark.
just want to come back. There's a lot of punishment.
I will do what you want.
Well, I agree it's ridiculous to have a 35-foot height allowance, you know, for solar panels and for private solar panels and a 20-foot allowance for commercial. So, I mean, there ought to be some consistency there. So,
If you want, I
that
could
just
put-
means you'd have to expand this to take away, you know, you're not going to go with the height requirements so that, you know, whatever it is, Article 13, but, you know, just say that.
Well, I say comply with the minimum setback requirements and then like do, found in Article 13, and then do period, and then say the maximum height will be 20.
20 feet.
I mean, I can do
Yeah,
that,
you can do
yeah.
that. I mean,
I can do some language like
That takes care
that.
of that issue.
Yeah.
So why is a 22-foot solar panel not okay, but a 22-foot sturdy-built barn is
35 foot.
35 foot? So 20,
Yeah.
25, 35, you know, anywhere in between.
It's a building, it's not a panel.
That's kind of
Well,
why.
aren't they both, it seems like we're treating, they're both structures and they're both visually blocking, but one's okay and one
I
isn't.
think where we came up with that number was because industry was using panels that were up to certain heights, and that's where we wrote those.
Right, for the commercial one, but when we're going back to the private solar.
Yeah, I was just pointing out the fact that there is a discrepancy there, making sure, I mean, I agree, I mean, you can put up a 35-foot tall building, 10 foot from your property line, but now you can only put up a 20-foot tall solar
Right.
panel. I just want to make sure everybody understood that there's a discrepancy in what you require on the commercial side versus the residential with the height, if you just say height. I mean, if you want to leave, I don't know if they're that tall, if you want to leave it, we can leave it, I'm just pointing out that as I was writing it.
No, I think that's an excellent point, Mark.
Yeah. Yeah, you can have a 100 by 100 building, 35 foot tall, 10 foot from your property line by regulation. But you can only have a 20 foot tall solar panel if it's residential.
Maybe we put residential on our list of to-dos for 2024 and take it out of this commercial solar energy systems regulations, and we do residential in 24 at some point, a text amendment.
I don't know. I mean, a lot easier just to do it now if we're getting, figure out what we want to do, rather than trying to come back and squeeze it into this or create another article.
There's a lot of other text amendments that, you know, us two would like to get to.
I get that.
So I don't know how critical residential solar is gonna be to this board, but there's a lot of other priorities that we
We
need
got
to
the
look at as
setbacks
well.
that we got, need to get on.
Setbacks.
One, a whole bunch of stuff.
I
It's a lot
think-
more critical.
I think this could be put on the list, but further down, I think when we get to that list that where we were working on, it will satisfy some of what we're gonna talk about potentially in a residential solar. I think it will be addressed there to an extent, just because the setbacks are gonna be more consistent, those types of things. So
So you're talking about not making residential in these regulations?
that's correct.
I don't know, I'm kind of the other opinion, if it's gonna be as simple as that, if you want it, then take care of it now, because it, you know, I mean, we're doing one text amendment a year, it's not like we're doing 4 or 5 a year, we can get to that next year sometime.
This is
The way the
this is a-
caseload is going.
This is a big dude, though.
Is it a big deal? I mean,
I mean,
There's
this
talking ground mounted, and I don't know, I don't know how many of those get installed on an annual basis.
I haven't been contacted in a while by a solar company about residential, but, yeah.
they're gonna mount it on a roof if they
Most
got a
of them are
chance.
roof mounts, yeah.
That way they don't have to build any infrastructure underneath, and the wire goes directly through the roof into the house and they're done.
Yeah.
I mean, there's, like, I mean, off the top of my head, I can tell you, you know, there's the ag lot split issue, there's setbacks issue, there's home occupations. A few years ago, when Mr. Jones was here, you know, we talked about manufactured home and manufactured home park regulations that need to be looked at and adjusted. So, I mean, there's 4 right there off the top of my head. I've got another list of others that I see as well. And so, I mean, we can certainly put this on the list, but then you, as a board, would have to prioritize where solar is gonna fit in amongst all those other ones that I just described.
If you'd asked me 2 weeks ago, I would have thought including private solar was a simple thing, relatively speaking. And the more we talk about it, it's relatively straightforward, but we already have this height requirement question. I think of it as from the perspective of a citizen or property owner coming in here, and you guys having to explain that, well, you can't actually put it high enough to get the sun over the trees unless you wanted to put it on a 100-foot building, and then it's okay.
Yeah.
And if we already can see questions like that, maybe it's not quite as simple as we thought it was. Man, it's like there's a can of worms on every corner.
You didn't think I was gonna be this hard, did you? Tonight,
Big
so-
bucks.
Yeah.
I don't,
No, yeah, we got an issue on the height, and that's, as far as I can tell, that's the only issue we have on this.
I mean, it could be as simple or as complicated as you want to potentially make that. I mean, Garth, you're kind of the champion of this, I think, a little bit, to put you on the spot, thoughts.
Boy, the room just got dark and the spotlight got put on guard.
That's okay. I feel compelled to get ahead of issues, and with what I see and read about solar development, it is, we're entering into some exponential development curve. And I don't think we can grasp that right now. I just want to, I want to have some protection going forward for people having to live beside neighbors constructing solar generation structures. And I guess I'm thinking, okay, so we have a height difference between commercial and residential. We have height differences between agriculture buildings and residential. So, it'd be nice if everything was the same, but it's not.
I mean, I could easily probably fix the height issue by just saying what I did, just not referencing Article 13 for the height and establishing our own separate height requirement in there.
Well, you can
If that's-
reference Article 13 and exclude the height,
Yeah, or do it that
a
way.
maximum of a 20-foot for solar.
Yeah. I mean, there's different ways that we can write that in there and leave it
If
in.
it's that simple, then we could, then I'd be okay with leaving it in.
Well, if that's the only problem, is the height, then it's that simple.
Yeah, if that's the
Because
only,
the
I
set-
mean, you look at if somebody's putting in a ground mount solar, there's a reason they're doing that rather than putting it on their roof. Whether they've got trees or whatever else. And so they're gonna be able to position it, I would assume that they don't need to worry about trying to put the panels 35 feet up in the air. You know, I mean, that's just like myself, if I were to put solar on my house, I'd probably go with ground mount. I've got enough land I could do it,
right.
you know, and then I wouldn't have to worry about all the stupid panels on the roof if I ever needed to put a new roof down. So,
Exactly.
Your roof may face the wrong direction too.
yeah, well, that's another issue I have, is they don't have that much south-facing roof.
So if you still want these in the residential, if you still want that in there, and if that's the only issue, I think the question here is the height issue, and that's easy to fix, or if you want them in there or not, and if you still want them in there, then it's that easy to fix.
I'd say put the 20 foot in there. I mean, if somebody has some reason they have to have it higher, then they can come to us, right?
Yeah. Be a variance.
Yeah, but at least then somebody's not building a 35-foot high jungle gym.
Yeah, be a
To hang
variance, and
panels
you're
on.
notifying property owners, and we're having a hearing, and
Yeah,
I'd still reference the other article because it takes care of all the setbacks.
Yes, it does.
And as you change the setbacks, it changes that too.
yeah,
So-
and that's the simple.
You don't have to go.
We don't have to go back.
Right, so they can just say, and then, for the setbacks, and then,
Right.
maximum height of 20 feet,
So
however
you
you
just
want
do
it.
this excluding the height
Yeah.
and make the maximum height 20 foot.
Yep,
Yep.
I'm game with that.
Plug it in, go, yep, okay, I'm good.
And then with that, I would assume that we're all in agreement that it'll stay in the document then.
Yes.
yeah.
Then the name would change to Solar Energy Systems Regulations and by striking the word commercial.
Yeah.
Or you could say commercial and private.
I just simplify. All right.
Okay. All right.
Does that make sense, Mark?
That makes
What we
sense.
just did?
Yeah, I'll come up with some wording, yeah, we'll get it figured out. It'll be fairly simple, so. Okay, so then that takes care of really page 1. On page 2, there was nothing that the board wanted, unless you review this further. I'm just kind of going over my highlights.
You're going just fine.
So please, if anybody had anything else, please stop me. Page 3, I didn't have anything. Page 4, I didn't have anything. Page 5, this is something that Steve brought up a couple weeks ago about adding in other agencies that deal with water management. So we just said where applicable, the appropriate groundwater management district, Cheney Lake Watershed District, and the U.S. Department of Ag or their successors shall be contacted regarding the project A written document shall be submitted regarding the proposal, stating the project has been reviewed or is currently under review for any concerns.
Submitted by whom?
Submitted by those agencies.
By the,
The grant-
by the aforementioned agencies.
Be submitted, yeah, okay. Is it submitted by the by the applicant, or is it submitted by the agency? Yeah.
By the aforementioned agencies, something like that.
Well, I think it would be up to the applicant to get that document and then include it in the case file versus these agencies contacting me directly on something.
So I guess the thing, yeah, my question would be is, who is submitting it and to whom are they submitting it?
Well,
Do we need to specify
Well,
that?
Submitting it to
I
me.
think I think it's assumed that the applicant shall, a written document shall be submitted by the applicant regarding proposals stating project has been reviewed by these agencies or is currently under review for any concerns.
because these regulations are talking to the applicant. That's
Yeah.
what they have to
Written
do.
document shall be submitted, let's just say by the applicant,
Right.
that clarifies it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Regarding the proposal stating.
Writing it, that's how I wrote it, is we're talking to the applicant, or the applicant is reading this, but I get it. And so that's the kind of help that I need from this board on things like that, if you see something, because, I'm writing this and I know what I'm talking about, but maybe the applicant or yourself don't know, so I appreciate that.
That's an easy.
Well, this, section 25107, the very first sentence says, "The information listed below shall be submitted with a conditional use permit application."
Yeah, I mean, this kind of helps further reinforce or clarify.
Tomato, tomato to me.
Yeah, to me, I mean, you're naming all these other agencies, you say written document shall be submitted.
Is there anybody that I missed?
It clarifies it to me, where it says by the applicant. Yeah,
Yep.
that makes it more easily understood who's doing the submitting.
Only 3 words.
Yep.
I get
That's
that. Yeah. On number 5, I added the word "to." I think Alan pointed that out last month, if I'm not mistaken. So I added that word. I didn't have anything on 25.6. On 25.7, letter D under the setbacks, I changed it to project instead of component. That was a good catch. I also noticed as I was looking at this document that there might be an extra space on the second line between the words "shall" and "consult," so I will check that and correct that. That's just grammar stuff, so to call it a project instead of a component. I didn't have anything on 25.8 or 25.9. I didn't have anything. Nor under 25.10. 25.11, I want to talk, I guess the third topic of discussion would be floodplain. So I might have been amiss in my discussion with the board a little bit on the concerns with floodplain. I went back and looked at the floodplain map across the county now, albeit this is being written for the eastern part. I think restricting it to prohibiting it in the floodplain at all is probably a little excessive and a little too restrictive. Because, and the reason being is we allow any type of development in a floodplain. It's not suggested that you do it, but we allow it if you can meet the regulations, state, local, federal regulations. You can put a hay barn you can put a house in there. A person can do a channel change on their property if they got the creek running through their property. You can add dirt. You can do anything you want in the floodplain if you acquire the proper permits. So why would we be overly restrictive in saying no to a solar project? The panels are going to be obviously probably elevated above the base flood. That's going to be a given. The electrical boxes associated with that, the motors would be all above. And so the only thing I would say, the only issue they could be would be the fencing, okay? So if we allow the floodplain, but we're requiring a chain link fence is a type of restrictive building structure, if you will, that could potentially say no to the floodplain because you cannot put fencing in the floodplain because chain link, solid wood acts as obviously a barrier to floodwaters, which could increase that floodplain elevation by more than 1 foot. And if you do that, then it cannot be allowed. Now, if you do, barbed wire fence, cattle fences, breakaway fences, that type of stuff, those would be allowed in the floodplain. Chain link and throwing in there solid wood as well, that's an issue. And because those types of fences catch debris. A chain link fence easily turns into a solid wall when you have grass, corn stalk, mud, everything else in a flood. And so
I think another issue that, why we were considering putting that provision in there was not just the fencing issue that you're bringing up, Mark, which I think is very valid, but also that, this kind of carries over to the groundwater issue. Because, there, I think it's been proven that, the solar fields do leach off some chemicals. And if it's in a floodplain, where is it gonna go? If we do have high water, it's gonna go, downstream into the creeks, the rivers, the lakes, or whatever, with much more frequency than it would if it were not in a floodplain. So I think that addresses two issues. One, more the environmental issue, but then also, the fencing issue where you're not creating dams in the floodplain.
Yep.
So
I agree to a certain extent, but during a flooding event, cars are potentially going to be floating down, barrels of oil, barrels of gas, I'm sure farms have their own gas pumps and
we're
stuff.
not regulating those, we're regulating solar systems.
Yeah.
But why are we treating solar panels different than
Because we have the opportunity to do so.
well, but is that how you set public policy because it's right there? And I mean,
Public policy evolves, it's, what we may say, oh God, we gotta do something about this today is something that they wouldn't have even blinked at 20 years ago. So.
My compromise to the board, as I've written, any part of the project, including buildings used to store batteries, is prohibited from being located in a regulatory floodway. Now, the floodway is essentially the channel of the river and laying on either side of that channel to the point where that width will help dissipate or remove a 100-year flooding event, okay? So you prohibit it in that. Obviously, we don't want battery storage buildings, albeit they should be anchored down anyway, floating down the river. Saying that, really, floodways are only associated with AE type of flood zones. The only type of AE zones we have in the eastern part of the county would be the Little Ark River up by Bueller and a portion of the Arkansas River. All the other ones are what we call Zone A's, and so those don't contain any floodways. So, it would prohibit those types of storage.
Medical is not included in that or any of that.
Portion of it would be. But it's mainly those two, yeah. So
What's the Cow Creek area classified as?
that's an A,
Because there's a portion of that in the zone.
That's an AE, yeah. That's an AE. So, and that's pretty wide.
Yeah.
It's pretty wide up there.
It's so wide.
But, saying that, and the reason I put that in there is a floodway, the goal is it to help dissipate that flooding event. And so that area should be kept free and clear of any type of buildings. Now, there are buildings in those, both probably illegally and also what we call pre-firm structures or buildings that were in there before we developed the floodplain map. And so, a farmhouse built in the 1940s, a building built in the 1950s, 60s, those are what we call pre-firm structures. And so I think we should potentially allow them. They still have to get permits through me, they still have to get permits through the state in there, and then prohibit them in the floodway.
Wait,
So that paragraph A, that first sentence, required the applicant shall obtain a floodplain development permit from Kansas Department of Agriculture. No, I'm not gonna read it all, because we can all read. That pretty much takes care of that, what you're talking about. And then
And
if
that's gonna
we,
be construction of roads, like I said in there, if you're constructing berms, I mean, all that's gonna have to be reviewed. Now, the state will review it if they're gonna bring in more than a foot of fill dirt or use more than a foot of dirt. That's when they'll get involved.
will they review the fence issue you brought up?
If they consider that a type of fill, then yes. If not, then I will catch it on the local end as far as you need to provide me a flood analysis showing me
Gotcha.
what that
So-
fence is gonna do.
So we're gonna, we've got our protections in place. There's no need to have that paragraph C to prohibit them.
Well, that's in the
Well,
floodway.
that's a floodway though.
That's in a floodway, not the
Okay,
flood zone.
That's different than a floodplain.
And I think keeping structures out of the floodway is a reasonable.
Yeah.
I think that's reasonable.
So what was, I guess I'm confused on what the original question was then.
Because right now you've got it to where they can't build any of these in floodplain.
No, the proposal that you brought forth to me last month, or the directive, I guess I should say, was to prohibit it everywhere in the floodplain.
Yes,
In the
you can.
floodplain. I didn't do that.
He didn't say that. You wrote it.
He said floodway instead of floodplain, he tried to sneak it on.
So I'm trying to be honest with the board here, I didn't try and sneak it past you, yes.
Where the room got dark for Garth, it just got light for me.
So I went against your directive.
I follow completely now. Now I
I'll be honest, up front here, yeah. So I thought that was,
How much,
after I said that and thought about it a little bit more, that's pretty restricted, because, we have some wide floodplains out in the eastern part of the county too.
say you looked at the floodplain map, okay, how much ground does that exclude?
A lot.
Reno.
That's
I mean, what's a lot? I mean, I'd have to show you that. Go on the website and you can look at the floodplain map. I mean, go on, we call it the beacon, go on beacon and you can turn on the flood layer and you can look at the extent of the floodplain.
Can you do that and overlay that on the zoned area?
Yep. Yep, you
And
can.
all a floodplain is how much you could grow to and expand out. It doesn't mean it's the floodway.
Right.
And most everything that's not in a floodplain is probably gonna drain to a floodplain.
Floodway. It's gonna drain into the
And
floodway.
to a floodplain.
Yeah.
Even if you are out of the floodplain, I mean, where's it gonna drain?
Well, and if there's a project that's gonna be built, that is gonna be in the floodplain, it still has a review process. It's not
That's
like we're
right.
saying build wherever you want.
And I would think that they would try and avoid those anyway.
Right.
Because nobody wants to have to get any more permits than what they need to anyway. I mean, you don't want to have to go to the state and go through that review process and go through the Army Corps and go through that process. I mean, usually, so you like to try and avoid those hurdles if at all possible. And if there's other lands on there, then you can do that.
Correct me if I'm wrong, even if you put a number of solar panels on, and they were so close you thought it was gonna cause a rise, that would be
Yeah,
checked over by Mark. It wouldn't be allowed.
right. I mean, we could.
Excluding the fence, just the
Yeah,
panels,
yeah.
or the poles themselves.
Now
So-
that you
so-
explained the difference between floodway and floodplain, it makes perfect sense.
So what I wrote was what I think we should do, not what you directed me to do. So if you want to go back, we can certainly do that. I just need to change that, but is that a fair compromise, I guess, if you will?
Quite.
I'm trying to remember, in the mortgage lending world, there's elevations. You can build in a floodplain as long as your improvements are above the 100-year flood elevation. Is it too complicated if we would say the panels have to be constructed so that they're above the, 100-year elevation.
Then we're skirting above that 20-foot number that we were talking, that we.
That's a given, though.
Yeah, that's a given.
That's a given in the regulations. Anything, like any building needs to be elevated a foot above or flood-proofed. And so these panels, you would
If
have,
we're gonna allow it, that's already covered.
it's already covered.
Up to 20 feet.
Because, they'll have to provide elevation certificates and what the base flood is, because, the base flood isn't always at ground level. The base flood could be 6 inches above, the base flood could be a foot above the ground level. So then you'd have to go a foot above that. So you're talking solar panels that are 15 foot in the air. The electrical boxes would be right there, the junction boxes, all that kind of stuff. So I don't think the panels will be an issue. Water will be able to free flow underneath. It's going to be the fence that's going to be the concern.
And it is possible to have a fence that complies. I mean, we're requiring fencing of the project.
Yeah.
So it seems like if a fence can't comply, that's kind of a deal killer to the whole topic.
It's a built-in safeguard.
Yeah.
And you
I think-
look at the junction boxes, I mean, you look at the wind turbines that are out there, and those things are, I don't know, what, they're 3 or 4 feet tall.
And maybe something you'd have to look at, some type of variance for a particular area where, okay, maybe you can't put a chain link fence in. Is there another type of fence that they can install that would be acceptable to this board?
But that's something we can talk about for a specific project.
Once we get a
Right,
conditional
but-
use permit application.
Yeah, but for the base regulations, having the chain link fence as a starting point for security, I think is a good idea. Yep. But
Okay. 2512, page, I changed on the decommissioning agreement to say it's a facility. I forget what the word was before. I probably had something that, I probably had components or something. In letter B, up top, I don't have that up. What page? Did I miss one?
Page 12, H, or I mean G, isn't it, you got 4 feet? We changed that on G,
I'm
on page
I'm not on 13
2513.
yet.
Oh, you're not there
Yeah.
Sorry.
That's all right.
B and G are both changed to 4 feet.
Yeah, B and G, so, I don't know, you want to explain it, or?
Well, one was 4 foot and one was,
Low ground surface.
48 inches. It
Oh,
needs to
yeah.
be consistent, it needs to be feet.
So we changed it all to feet because all of our setbacks are in feet. When we don't have something that says, well, you gotta be, 48, inches, off the property line, or, 1,000 inches. So we changed everything to feet
Everything that we talk about is feet.
instead, so. So that's on 2512, 2513 as well, and letter G. In number 4, under the dispute mitigation, I added that half sentence there, which I think Steve mentioned last month, which shall include decommission of the facility. I have decommissioning. I changed that to decommission of the facility. I think that's better, is it not? So it should say, which shall include decommission of the facility.
You could say the decommissioning of.
Or I can say the include, I kind of like decommission, or no, or do you like the other way? Or
I prefer to say the decommissioning of the facility.
include,
I think it reads better.
Just add
okay. I can add the word the, or I can change it to decommission, whatever, so, all right. Under 2514, we already talked about that. I will mention, I have SWPPP mentioned. I was remiss in my talking about it last month in September, I guess in September. Harley had mentioned that. He had questioned, is it SWPPP or SWPP? My research says it's SWPPP. SWPP is the Society of Workforce Planning Professionals, or Source Water Protection Program.
We'll go with your research.
That's what I found out. When Harley called me, I mentioned that to him, and so he was good. So I just highlighted that just for your knowledge, because that was in the August minutes, and I did not mention that. 25-15, I didn't have anything, and then the end of the document is 25-16, we already talked about residential, so that concludes everything that I have on there, so.
Okay,
You want my newest hot list?
Your what? Your newest what?
Hot list?
Sure. Give it to me.
Sorry.
We want that.
I want to go back to the floodway, floodplain discussion. I'm still cranking around on that.
Okay.
And the buildings used to store batteries, that does seem to be particularly sensitive. And would it be too complicated if we would just say those buildings cannot be in a floodplain or a floodway?
No, I don't. I mean,
Including all buildings associated with the project are prohibited.
Well, you could say all buildings, but
no.
I was just thinking any building used to store batteries.
Garth, I think it wants to say that it should not be in the flood.
It should be prohibited,
Or
period.
in the flood.
I'm with you. I got you.
Either one.
so, I think yes, I mean, I don't think that would be necessarily an issue. We can talk about what it would take to permit it, so, and maybe that changes your mind, maybe it doesn't. And so if you're going to put a building in the floodplain like that, two options: you elevate it 1 foot above base flood, which, 12 inches above floodwaters, I mean, that's not very high. If you get more than a 100-year storm, because we're regulating the 100-year or 1% chance storm. If you get a 500-year storm, water's gonna be on that building, okay, potentially floating away. You elevate it 1 foot above, that's all you have to do, it meets regulations, and you're fine. Or you can have it sitting on ground level or like in the floodplain, but then when you do that, it has to be anchored to resist overtopping flotation, that type of stuff. So then they would have to do things like, putting anchors in or tying it down to the ground somehow. But you would also have to install like flood vents. Probably what we would do in this case is we would recommend and probably require them to elevate it at least a foot above. And so that's what they would have to do in order to get that properly permitted, because flood vents would let water in and out of the building. That's one way of doing it for wet floodproofing. The other way you would do it would be dry floodproofing, which would be preventing water from ever entering that building at all. And so they would have two options of that. We would probably suggest that they either do dry floodproofing or elevation.
I think I kind of agree with what Garth's saying, because, your batteries are, if you look from an environmental standpoint, if you do have a flooding issue and water gets into the battery storage building, it could leach chemicals out of the
Yep.
batteries
Yep.
and whatnot, and it goes on
So-
down to the rivers and lakes and whatnot. Whereas if it's elevated above or in a flood-proof building, as you call it, whatever, then that provides some insurance against that event happening.
It gets more and more complicated, I guess, we can do that. I don't think it's overly restrictive. I would caution though, so if they really, really want to put the batteries on this parcel and it's in the floodplain, they can use dirt and build it on a pad. And that pad has to be at least at base flood elevation, preferably at least 1 foot above. They build this pad, 20 by 50, whatever the building is. And then they apply for a letter of map revision based on fill and take that pad of dirt out of the floodplain. So now that pad of dirt's not in the floodplain. So now are we gonna allow a battery storage unit to sit on a pad of dirt that's at least a foot above base flood? Because once it's out of the floodplain regulations don't apply anymore. So it's a little more complicated than just saying, no, you can't build a floodplain, because there's things that they can do
Get it out.
and get permits for and bring it out of the floodplain, and there would be nothing I could do
When
about
you
it.
say if a building is built within the floodplain, then there has to be certain construction or whatever else. Can we say, do that to kind of?
It's already there, it's
All that
already
is
there.
already
because
there.
it's- Yeah.
So aren't we just being redundant then? Because there's already a set of regulations that cover what happens in a floodplain.
Right. But it's, I just want to make you aware that there's ways to get around those regulations by just bringing in a couple feet of dirt, you take it out of the floodplain with a state permit and that letter of map revision. And now, once it's out, now there are no floodplain regulations, and so you could have a battery storage facility sit in the middle of a property in the floodplain, but yet that's been removed.
So what's our options to try to prevent that?
So we'd have to come up with some language here that would prevent them from using fill dirt and applying for a lower F to be able to remove a portion of a property from the floodplain.
You're affecting more than just this document, though. You're going back to set a precedence for everybody building in a floodplain at that point.
It can be specific, yeah, I mean,
Right, but if you do that once for
yeah.
building a solar farm, what's stopping us from doing that for any kind of development?
Not,
Yeah, well, or the language can't.
yeah. We'd have to-
I would say I would let the flood restrictions take care of it. Because it's gonna tell them that they gotta move the dirt. And then if they're moving the dirt, then they gotta prove that it isn't gonna back the water up further upstream. And then on top of it, the fence that's gonna be around it is gonna be under scrutiny. I think there's a lot of checks and balances in place already.
So are you saying if they would want to put a battery storage building in a floodplain, they would have to elevate it?
Yes,
Or that would just be optional?
yes, no, they have
They
to.
would have to.
Elevate or flood-proof,
Okay. Well, as long as that's the case,
or
I
dry flood-proof.
think I'm okay with that.
Yeah, you can't just go set it in the floodplain. It has to be elevated.
Yeah, my preference would be just build it somewhere else and thinking in the planning stage of this, they probably have reasons why they want them located in certain places,
Yeah.
but it would not seem to be a deal killer to say you gotta move that building 80 feet south.
You know, and, go ahead.
Oh, I was saying, and that's something that the board can bring up during a specific application process, right? I mean, we could say, we can have these regulations, and then if a project comes in hypothetically and it's right on the edge of Cow Creek, we could say, whoa, hold on. But we don't need to put any language in here that says,
Yeah, I know many years ago when they had that horizontal drilling boom in Reno County.
Yeah.
There was a well they put in over towards Sterling that they had to elevate because it was in the floodplain. And they went in, built all the ground up and got everything all set. Then they found out they didn't build it up high enough, so they just scrapped the whole project.
Yeah. In talking this through with you, I may want to add additional language on the floodway that says that it can't be removed by what we call a Lomer process, which is a letter of map revision.
In the floodplain.
In the floodway.
Floodways, you mean?
In the floodway or the flood, because, you could do it in the floodway, I mean, we're really getting deep into floodplain, probably, more than you need to, but, you could bring in dirt, use dirt in a floodway, but then you have to do a no rise certification, because you can't cause any rise in a floodway. And so, but if you got a half-mile wide floodway, you bring in a whole pad of dirt, 20 by 40, whatever it is, engineer may sign off on that, and so I may want to add some additional protection language in there that says you can't remove
That's
it.
fine.
Do you want to put anything like, excuse me, transformers? Because I would think most of these things are going to have some kind of transformer substation that,
Well, it's,
but they're not a battery, they're not in the building.
that paragraph C says any part of the energy
Yeah.
system project, so I think that's all that.
Yeah. Anything else? So I can make those few changes
Excuse me.
if you want. I can get rid of all the crossed out and the highlights, and I can bring it back to you next month with what we kind of discussed, those few little tweaks there if you'd like.
Are we all comfortable enough with the changes for Mark to make for us to set a potential public hearing date for these regulations?
I am.
Yeah, I think so.
Steve?
Yep.
You still have the opportunity to review that, I mean,
Right.
at the public hearing or,
And at the public hearing, this is presented as a draft or a current proposal. And
Yes. We take public input, and they can give us whatever information they want, and then we can go back to the drawing board and
Change it or
yeah,
not.
this is a valid
We can
point.
start,
need
we
to
can
look
start
at it.
with white sheet of paper again, or we can add what they want,
Yeah.
what we feel fit from the input from.
So, I mean,
What's the, you're gonna have to help us, you've explained it to us before, but you're gonna have to help us again. We wanna have this public hearing. What kind of timing do you need for that all to take place?
we need to notify cities, township boards 20 days in advance of the public hearing, and publish in the official county newspaper, which is now the Nenasko Valley News. You saw my staff report here, I referenced Hutchinson News. That was prior to, we just recently changed September 1.
Legal's in the Rural Messenger, too. They
Is there?
published a couple of them. Just, I know the Yoder Township had
Yeah,
their budget
other-
in there.
Other ones may use other publications, so yeah, so it's in the Nenasko Valley News. There is no notification to the general public. I mean, we're not sending notices to, thousands of parcels. On our level, we'll do our best. It'll obviously be on the website. We'll get with our public information officer, and she'll be able to put it on the website, put it on the Facebook or X or Twitter or whatever it is now. We'll do our best on that way, but there's no notification to
Watchdog
citizens.
will pick it up and they'll take
Okay.
care of the rest of it for
Yeah,
us.
so we'll do our best on that end, 20 days in advance. So with that, since we've switched to the Nenasko Valley, they publish 1 day a week. Hutchinson News published legal 6 days a week. So they only publish on Fridays, okay? So if you were thinking about trying to have the public hearing in October, I cannot legally do that, okay? I'm 21 days out from, like tonight's hearing. I can't do it in October legally, okay? And so, at minimum, you're looking at sometime either, well, I'll say and then we'll talk. You're looking at late October, 1st November, or some other date between. Our next regularly scheduled meeting then would be like November the 16th, excluding the October one, okay? November 16th or December the 21st now. I'm unavailable in late October. The week after the October meeting, I'm unavailable. I believe some other people are unavailable the first week in November. So you can do the second week in November anytime you want. You could do the regularly scheduled meeting in November if you would like. Or probably wouldn't want to do it, obviously, around Thanksgiving. I'm looking at being gone that week, and certainly not around Christmas time as well.
What's
So
our caseload look like for the rest of the year?
I don't have anything scheduled. I've kind of put some other things off because I was anticipating trying to get through this project first, and so October, we don't have any public hearings. Yeah, in October, I'd probably like to discuss Board of Zoning Appeal bylaws. We got some changes that we need to make in our bylaws and everything, and so that's all we have in October. But like I say, I can't legally get this in the paper for October meeting. What I like to do is 22 days in advance. Statute requires 20, however, we don't count the day of the public hearing, nor do we count the day that it is published, so it's 20 days in between both of those dates and times. So what I would need from the board is a motion to set the public hearing date for a place, a date, and a time. If you want, you can do it at 4:30 PM in this building, on our regularly scheduled date in November. We have not researched other buildings where we want to hold the public hearing here. The board would certainly be able to take testimony at that time, and then you would have the option, if you want to continue the public hearing to another date and time. You certainly don't have to, be here for like 4 or 5 hours or whatever. You can continue the public hearing as long as we need to hear all public testimony. And then at that point in time, we would have further instructions from you, for you to close the public hearing, and then you can make a motion, or you can close the public hearing and you can study all the other information that you may get and all the other testimony that you would get.
What would be the date of our regular November meeting?
16.
16?
16?
Is there any advantage, timing-wise, to have a special meeting on the 9th? I mean, really, in the end game, are we going to gain anything?
I don't think we gain a lot. I really don't. A week, I mean.
No, that's fine. That
I don't-
answers my question. I didn't know how that looked and what, if that.
That's only if you gather information and then maybe want to make some changes and then come
On the
back at the
16th.
regular meeting.
I don't know if it's too early to tell. I don't know if if you're gonna need it, or if you're looking at multiple days, how the board wants to handle it. Are you willing to meet consecutive days? Or are you gonna be unavailable on certain days or what?
What's our status with the county commission kind of deadline they put out there?
That can be changed, that can be extended or whatever.
Movable.
Yes.
We have a moratorium to the end of the year.
Yeah.
And, they can extend that if they want.
I would not necessarily worry about that, really. What you need to do is worry about getting them a document to review at their request. So,
Would we want to look at making it a little later, maybe in the day, so it'd accommodate more people?
Yeah.
can?
Since a lot of people don't get off till after 5.
You don't have any feel about whether we need to look like, because we had one of them, we're up at the fairgrounds or somewhere, when we did the wind thing.
We have no idea.
No idea. If it comes to that, then, we may have to continue the hearing and move it, but yeah.
Find another place.
But we don't know.
We can hold 40 chairs here and then have it
We'll
out
have it in the hallway as well.
and
We
have
could
it
get,
monitored up like we did that one time.
we would scrunch this up and we would get like 50 chairs or more in here.
What's the board's appetite on Wednesday nights? I know that's not a huge, it has been traditionally been a church night. I just want to know what the board's appetite is there. If we all of a sudden would say, okay, here's what I'm thinking. We propose the 8th and the 9th, or the 15th and the 16th as potential public hearing dates.
So we would go ahead and have our normal October meeting, finalize the draft, vote to set it for hearing, and then then go to hearing after that.
Yeah, we've got it now. Yeah, we're gonna, we'll,
Well, we have to-
we'll be setting the hearing date tonight if that's our choice.
You're not finalizing the draft. I've got your changes, and part of this is I have to get this out on the web. I have the version now out there, but I don't have, obviously, your changes out there. It's gonna take me, mid next week, or, because I got a case here, I gotta get on the agenda as well, so, so I need a few days to do that.
So basically, we don't need to meet again to officially adopt. the final
Not to
version of
discuss this, no.
We're making
Unless
the
you-
changes you're requesting.
Yeah,
Not unless you want to, not unless you want to see it again, which, I mean,
Russ, did you say 8th and 9th, or 8th or 9th?
8th and 9th. I anticipate we're gonna need a couple of evenings.
Okay.
That depends on how late you want to stay.
Yep.
And how many people are here.
The first night of the wind farm public hearings, we thought we might be able to get through it in one night, and we finally shut her off. What was it, 9:30?
Yeah.
10 o'clock, something like that.
Well, do we want to have an ending time established?
I think we can.
I think you discuss that as a board as it comes.
I think we have we get through a good part of the evening. We take a recess, take a breather, we come back and we discuss. Let's just say that we start, I'm throwing stuff out there. By no means am I trying to dictate what's going on, but let's say we start at 5 o'clock. We're coming right around the 9 o'clock hour, and we've heard 4 hours of testimony, 5 minutes at a time. You gotta understand that would give a lot of opportunity for people to speak. It's not exactly 5 minutes rotation, we'll get through the nuts and bolts later, but we'll hear a lot of testimony in that 4 hours, and that's a lot of information to digest. At that point, we can say, okay, we're gonna pause the testimony for just a moment and discuss the future date and time and place. And that's why I want to keep 8. That's why I was saying 8th is our primary, and then the 9th would be on our minds for the discussion if we need the 9th for the second day. Does that make sense?
Garth, you don't want to set a hard time anyway, because you may say, okay, we're going to end at 8 o'clock, and then you only have 2 people left to talk to. Now you're wishing you didn't end at 8 o'clock.
Yeah, you have to sit here till 8.
Yeah, you'd have to sit here till 8 PM.
Oh, okay.
Because somebody could, work.
Yeah, even if you was done, you'd have to set till 8.
We'd be sitting here with the public hearing.
Or else there's only 2 people left, and you could finish them by 8:15 or 8:10.
So I just threw those 2 dates out there. Just take a look at that and let's just chew on that just a little bit.
Then we'd keep our regular meeting on the 16th,
Yes.
so we could have the hearing on those 2 days.
If I had my choices.
Chew that around, and if we need to make any changes, we'd have a meeting the next week to discuss those.
That would be exactly what if I had my first pick, that'd be mine.
Works for me.
So if we assume a Wednesday, Thursday, then if we've got people that have Wednesday conflicts, they'll still have an opportunity
On
to talk on Thursday.
Assuming we continue.
Not necessarily.
Yeah, but not necessarily.
Well, that's what,
So do you want to change that
Are
up?
we, I was gonna say, are we not running under the assumption that we'll do both days? Or?
We will set it for Wednesday. And
Okay,
then
with the option to
at Wednesday, if we determine that there's enough people that want to provide testimony, then we can continue it to Thursday.
Thursday, I see.
Do that on Wednesday.
Do you think it would be better to go with Tuesday, Thursday?
Oh, yeah, no.
No?
No, there's only.
I don't know how big Wednesday is. I think it still is for some people.
It is.
I think there's a certain
that's-
population, and I would hate for them to not have the opportunity.
Exactly, and
And
that's
you're
why,
looking at
I brought that up.
You look at the areas that we're looking at, it's a rural area, they may be more inclined to be at church on Wednesdays.
And if they want to speak, I want them to have the chance. I don't want it to feel like we're putting it during the time that they,
That squashes the bug.
yeah.
No, and that's why I asked,
The
what,
7th is election day.
Yeah.
Oh,
that's not a good day.
So you do a Thursday, Friday?
I'm not opposed to that, but there's gonna be, well,
Monday, Thursday?
Well, I mean,
Does the county observe
the election?
Veterans Day?
The election's a
Yeah.
As a day off?
yes.
So
Oh,
the
okay.
10th, is that off limits then? Because
Okay.
that Saturday is Veterans Day.
Yeah.
No, we observe it on, was
Wednesday,
it,
then, it must be, okay.
Way we get off Friday.
That's the 10th.
Right.
Yeah.
yeah, we'd be off Friday.
Okay, so a Wednesday, or like a Thursday, Friday wouldn't work then
No.
that week?
We could do, because of the election, we could do it Monday, Thursday,
A Monday,
That
Thursday?
week, it's
Or-
Monday, Thursday.
Thursday and slop over the next week.
So I have to ask that question. When you say Wednesday and Thursday, what if it's Wednesday and everybody's heard that came here? Are you saying you're gonna come back on Thursday for the hearing too, in case somebody didn't show up that was in church?
We're using a second day just just in the back of our mind, so if we have to continue it, we're all on the same page
We
for
would
that
make that
continuance.
decision that
Okay.
late in the
Yeah,
first day.
we're not trying to pick 2
That's
days.
why, going to what Alan says, the first day of the hearing maybe ought to be non-Wednesday. So if people want to go to church, they go to church. They don't have to make a decision to come here versus going to there.
I
We
heard
don't
you
have to
guys.
publish the second day.
No,
No.
no.
So could we do it Thursday, then a Monday the following week?
Mark Garth was saying something
Yeah,
like
did
that
Garth
too.
say is that,
Yeah.
I could,
so if if we have 5 people show up or 10 people, or if we can shoot through them on Thursday.
yes.
Yeah, we do that Monday's the 13th, and that still gives us time before our meeting on the 16th, so we'd have all the hearing.
So we've avoided church, we've avoided Veterans Day, we've avoided Election Day.
But we've hit Mark's Monday.
I play pickleball on Mondays.
And Mark,
Oh, geez.
you'd probably like to avoid,
pickleball.
you'd probably like to avoid Monday.
We might have to postpone.
Try to avoid Monday,
That's all right.
unless I'm
All
for
right.
Halloween.
So, okay, I'm summarizing here. 9th is our primary,
Yes.
starting at 5 o'clock. Is that an okay time, or you want to go, Gail, you mentioned maybe going a little bit later? Is 5 o'clock late? And we start at 4:30 regularly. We go to 5 o'clock, is that late enough, or do we need to go
Start at 6.
start at 6?
Well,
No, Garth is saying no.
people don't necessarily have to be here when the
Right.
meeting
Right.
starts.
Okay,
If
so
we're
if
gonna be
we,
here several hours.
so if we say start at 5.
5 PM.
If we start at 5 on that Thursday, the 9th, here at the Public Works Facility?
Yep.
That sound fair enough?
With the idea if we need to continue it, we'll flop over to the following Monday.
Yep, the 13th is our alternate for a second date that we'll discuss if needed.
5 o'clock, same deal.
Yep, same time, same place. How's that sound? Don? Mark? You good with that?
That's fine, so
That gives you time to do what you need to do,
it
Mark?
gives me all of October
Okay.
and stuff, and so I can get preparation of the documents and.
Do you need, you've got our consensus, do you need an official vote for that?
Yeah, I need a motion. Put in a motion, put it in terms of a motion and announce it, and then second, and then give me a vote.
Chair will entertain a motion.
I would move that we place the draft of the solar regulations for public comment hearing on November 9th at 5 PM here at the Public Works Building. That covered?
And if we need to extend it.
Yeah, well.
Yeah,
We can make
This is
that
November 9th
later.
at 5 o'clock.
5 o'clock here in the Public Works Building.
Been moved, do I hear a second?
Second.
Been moved and seconded, any further discussion? Staff, you want to call a roll on this one?
Schwertfeger,
Yes.
Strand,
Yes.
Schaefer,
Yes.
Seltzer,
Yes.
Martin,
Yes.
and Gertson.
Yes.
And I would just add to that, that the Public Works Building is located at 600 Scott Boulevard in South Hutchinson.
That's perfect. Perfect. Good. Awesome. I think that comes to the end of our agenda items. Is there any other business to be brought forth?
Who's bringing cookies?
Who's bringing cookies?
Nice, who's bringing dinner?
Might want cookies, more than cookies later. Staff, Dawn, you have anything further for us?
No.
Okay, Chair will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Discussion on adjournment. All in